This video, we're going to talk about 2.1 Objective 4, where we interpret frequency histograms, frequency polygons, relative frequency histograms, and ogives. First, let's ask what is the difference between a frequency polygon and an ogive. A frequency polygon displays class frequencies, while an ogive displays cumulative frequencies. So that's B. Second, let's determine whether the statement is true or false. If it's false, rewrite it as a true statement. The graph of the cumulative frequencies can decrease from left to right. That's a false statement. And the reason it's false is that the graph of cumulative frequencies always start on the lower boundary of the first class and increases to the upper boundary of the last class, and therefore always increases from left to right. So that's B. We'll see that as we go on, that they're always increasing from left to right when we do ogives. Determine whether the statement is true or false, and if it's false, rewrite it as a true statement. Class boundaries ensure the consecutive bars of a histogram touch. That's true. So here's a frequency histogram, and we're going to first count how many classes we have. So let's count the number of bars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Notice in a histogram that all the bars touch each other. That's what we were just saying there about the class boundaries. Now the least frequency is about 10. It's about a tenth of the way from 0 to 100, or about a fifth of the way from 0 to 50, since there's a line at 50 in between there. The greatest frequency is a little bit above 250. That looks like it's maybe 2/5 of the way up to 300. So I'm going to say that that's 270. And the class width is the difference between these midpoints here. So that's 10. And what pattern does the histogram have? About half the employees' salaries are between 50,000 and 69,000. So that's B. What they're saying there is, if we look at these two big bars right here, that they have as much area as all the other bars added together. That's what they're talking about half of the salaries are in that range, because that's half, because the other half is spread up between all the other bars. Right? Now let's go ahead and use the frequency polygon here to identify classes with the greatest and the class with the least frequency. We're going to ignore these endpoints. They're not really part of one of my classes. We kind of go back a class and forward a class and make it touch the x-axis, but they're not important for us to find greatest and least frequencies. So the greatest frequency happens here, and that's centered around 34. Our class width is going to be 3. So half of 3 is 1.5. So we have our greatest frequency happens with an upper bound of 35.5 and a lower bound of 32.5. Our least frequency happens right here, centered at 16. And that's going to be 16 plus or minus 1.5. So it's going to have an upper bound of 17.5, a lower bound of 14.5. Let's use the frequency histogram over here, but notice this time it's not just regular frequency, it's relative frequency. So that means this is probability on this side. Identify the class with the greatest and the class with the least relative frequency. So class with the greatest relative frequency is right here, centered at 35.5. And it looks like these classes are 1 apart because it goes 35.5 to 36.5. So that means that my boundary endpoints here are 35 and 36 for this class with the greatest frequency. And the class with the lowest frequency is over here, and that looks like that's from 39 to 40. Again, if you want to see how I did that, the difference, pick any two consecutive class marks here, like 31.5 minus 30.5. You see that it has a distance of 1.0. We're going to need to divide that by 2 so that we get the bit to the left and the bit to the right, and that's 0.5. So that's what we're going to plus or minus to get our boundary points. So 30.5 minus 0.5 is 30, and 30.5 plus 0.5 is 31, and so on. And you're going to see that these boundaries are all going to be one away from each other, and that's how the histogram is made. The greatest relative frequency is about 25%. The least relative frequency is about 1%. It's down here, about a fifth of 5% is about 1% there. And what's something that the data can show us or tell us tells us that about 25% of female fibula lengths fall between 35 and 36 centimeters. So that's A. We saw that with our class that has the greatest relative frequency, and that greatest relative frequency was 25%. Now let's look at this ogive. Notice that the ogive is always increasing. It ends up here with the sum of the cumulative frequency here is going to be equal to the number of people sampled. So the number of people in the sample is about 50, because that's where our ogive ends up there on the y-axis. Choose the correct location of the greatest increase. So we're looking for the steepest slope here is what we're looking for, and that's this piece right here. And that goes between 23.5 and 24.5 pounds. So 23.5 and 24.5 pounds right there has the greatest increase, the steepest slope right there. What is the cumulative frequency for a weight of 27.5 pounds? So that's right here. That looks to be just right above 40. I don't know if you can really make that out. I'm going to try and zoom in just a little bit here, but 40 is right there, and the dot is just right above that. So I'm going to call that 41. Okay, and then let's see, what is the weight for which the cumulative frequency is 45? So again, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here, so you can see that 45 is right here on this line, and that's 30.5. Then it asks how many beagles weigh between 22.5 and 29.5 pounds. So 22.5 is right here, and 29.5 is right here. Let me erase my other markings here so we can see this as clearly as possible. 29.5, I'm going to come over here, and this is just below 45, so I think I'm going to call that 44, and then subtract, and then this one looks like it is right there on 10, and so I'm going to find the difference there, and that's 34. And how many beagles weigh more than 30.5 pounds? So we have a total of how many beagles? We have 55. total, and then 30.5 when we come up here. So less than or equal to 30.5 is 45. We're going to subtract to get what's greater than that, and we get 10. So that's how we're going to get that number. And I believe that that's it for this video. It is. So we're going to come back next time and talk about 2.1 Objective 5. See you for the next video.